we're coming to you live from the Natty's Finest Studios. It's week 10, ladies and gentlemen. You know what that means. We got Thursday night football this week. It's finally back. As if football 2 days a week wasn't good enough, we have an extra day. This week is Chargers versus the Raiders. Make sure you got your lineup set accordingly and all your players benched, starting. That's a word from the commish, word of wise. Got a lot to cover this week. Let's get straight into it. Last week's matchup, starting off with Dem Boys versus You Got Mossed. Big game. Both teams 3-6, looking to get one step closer to 500. Great performance by You Got Mossed and Tell Dem Boys. The late games actually came back, spawning Green Bay's defense to have 2 pick sixes. Just won the game, 128-120. Tough loss for You Got Mossed. Foster and Lynch did put up 20 plus for him, but Shop only put up 8. It wasn't enough for You Got Mossed in the end. They dropped 2, 3, and 7. Great game between Franchise and If You Ain't First, You're Last. Came down to the very last play of the game, 4 o'clock game last week between San Diego, Phillip Rivers in that game. Franchise ended up winning 155-152. If Rivers did not throw that late game interception, I think if you ain't first, your last would have won this game. So big ups to both teams. It was a great game. Another great point. Julio Jones for Franchise put up 51 points on 2 long receiving touchdowns. So if a few things went your way, if you ain't first, your last, you might have won that game. But tough loss overall. Oh no backups versus the Wildcats. Oh no backups was probably kind of a reach right now, but the pickup of the year in DeMarco Murray, just an absolute monster lately, putting up 20 plus points, while the Wildcats just had Gronkowski, and that's about it, putting up big numbers. Both teams held under 100 total points. In the end, it was oh no backups putting up the most, 99, and Wildcats only 79. So you know what I say, if you're under 100, it's tough to win in this league. Whole effing show versus EA Sports. This was a blowout from the start. Whole effing show, first place team versus last place team, EA Sports. Flacco and Vincent Jackson, big numbers. Whole effing show's on a 4-game winning streak. What else do you want me to say? EA Sports, I think you're out of the playoff hunt, unfortunately. You can still play spoiler, so look for teams to spoil their season. It's almost better than getting to the playoffs and losing anyway. So next we got the Rook versus America's Team. If you look back to my report last week, I talked about America's Team. This is a blowout, the Rook. But these guys are really surprising me. I think they're on a 2-game win streak. Matt Ryan finally doing something positive for the Rook. Reggie Bush finally putting up some numbers for the Rook, and they ended up defeating America's Team 114-76. Now, did the Rook have a good game, or did America's Team have a bad game? I would take a little bit of both, but overall, I think America's Team had a bad game. Brady was your only 20-point effort and 24 points. He scored under 100. I think you're better than that. Look to bounce back this week coming up. And my game of the week last week versus 2 more or less powerhouses, Pimpin' Breezy and Gully. In the end, it was all Pimpin' Breezy. He had a New Orleans Saint combination with Breeze, Sproles, and Graham putting up a total of 46 points combined. He's on a 3-game win streak. Gully only put up 72. Eli was his only big number player. A lot of injuries for Gully. Miles, Bradshaw, Andre Johnson is still out. So we'll see what he does down the road to get his team ready for the playoffs. Scored under 100. Not going to repeat myself, fellas. Let's take a look at the standings thus far and see what has changed from last week to this week. Okay, so a lot of movement after last week's games. Clearly, as I said before, EA Sports, I believe you're out of it now with 8 losses in your first 9 games. Franchise America's Team, both are a game back from first place in their respective divisions. Pimpin' Breezy and the Whole Effing Show are in first place in each division. Still, I want to tell you, still there are a lot of things that can happen. A lot of movement can happen. We still have 4 weeks remaining, including this week. If you're not already doing it now, you may be too late, but you need to be getting your team prepared for the playoff, prepared for your playoff push, the playoff run, get into the playoffs, and stay consistent. So if you're not doing that, you need to step it up. You need to be doing it. I thought I had a phone call there. On that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with last week's weekly prizes, Week 10's critical matchups, my picks, and of course, the GOW, my game of the week. Right after these words.
Be right back.
Okay. Greg Jennings. Nice Fantasy Hall of Fame jacket.
I know.
12 touchdowns in only your second year.
I am pretty awesome. What you need to do is find this year's Greg Jennings.
I will. Can I?
Sure.
Oh, that's soft.
Who's this year's Greg Jennings? Find out first at ESPN. The best experts, best features, best game. All for free at ESPN.com.
Okay, we're back. It's Natty's Finest. I'm Kamish. It's Thursday night, first NFL Thursday night football game of the season. It's Week 10. Let's get into the weekly prize, ladies and gentlemen. Who's won the money thus far? Week 1, highest points by Team Wildcats. Week 2, highest points by any player goes to Gully Gully. Week 3, highest quarterback. That's the whole effing show. Week 4, highest points by a running back, the backups. Week 5, highest points by a wide receiver, the rook. Week 6, highest points by a tight end, Pimpin' Ain't Breezy. Week 7, highest points by a defense, franchise. Week 8, highest points by a kicker, America's team. And Week 9, highest points by a total team, that's franchise, putting up those 155 numbers last week. Week 10 will be at the highest points for any player, so if you got a player that's going to put up big numbers, I shouldn't have to tell you to get him in your starting lineup. You can win $10 from the commissioner's pocket. That's the Natty's Finest weekly prizes. This brings us to the Week 10 matchups. Big games this week. I think all games are big. All games could be my GOW, except one in this week. But let's get started. Dem Boys versus Oh No Backups. Both teams coming off huge victories last week. 4-5 are the records for both of these guys. Who can get to 500 first? Who can get to 5-5? Even record first is the question for this game. I think in the end it's going to be close, but the deciding factor will be quarterback play. You got Vic on one side for no backups and Romo on another side for Dem Boys. If you ask me, both very inconsistent thus far in fantasy. Good matchups for each, and Romo playing Buffalo and Philly playing Arizona, so we'll probably see a lot of quarterback points this week. Who has more is my bottom line for the victor. Next, we have Gully Gully versus Wildcats. Another close matchup, both trying to get back on the win trail after tough losses last week. I'd give the nod to Gully Gully if he got healthy. If Miles were playing, if Andre Johnson were playing, if Ahmad Bradshaw were playing. But unfortunately, it's not that way, so I'm going to have to go inside with the Wildcats just because lack of injuries. He has his starters back. He's ready to go. So I will choose Wildcats in that game. You got Moss versus EA Sports. Only game that I think are going to get the less ratings, the less watch this week is between these two teams. Both are last place in their respective division. I don't believe both will make the playoffs. You got Moss. You still have kind of an outside chance. I think Dem Boys hurt you pretty good last week when they came back and beat you. Morally ended your season. So we'll see how you do. You got to win. If you lose, I think you're out of it. So we'll see what happens. As I said, EA Sports, you can play spoiler at this point. Not much more else you can do. 1-8, I don't know. The Rook versus If You're Not First, You're Last. Another huge game. The Rook is on a win streak right now. He's on a 2-3 game win streak. Can he keep it up? Victor in this game, I believe, will spot a playoff run. If you ain't first, your last is 3-6. However, he's one game back from a playoff spot. I do believe the winner of this game will get that momentum, gradually take their team into the playoffs. But a big question is the Rook, can he keep it up? I see some question marks on his team. He did drop Santonio Holmes a couple weeks ago, so we'll see how it plays out in the end. Got a treat for you guys this week. You count them, 2 games of the week, my GOWs. That is plural out there. Franchise versus Pimpin' Ain't Breezy. This is a first place, second place matchup. Franchise sitting at 6-3. Pimpin' Ain't Breezy sitting at 7-2. It's going to be a close game. I think both teams are loaded. Both teams have looked good thus far. Franchise, I think you have a little letdown after last week's emotional, close victory. Came out in the end. I just think you're going to have a little letdown. Pimpin' Ain't Breezy's got a lot of firepower. In the end, I think they take it, continue their first place, of the East Side Division. Next game of the week, as I said, we have two. America's team sitting at 6-3 as well versus the whole effing show, another first place team sitting at 7-2. I like to watch this game closely. Could be a blowout. America's team will put up big points this week. They got a lot of key players. MJD will bounce back. I think Fred Jackson will bounce back. Brady's Brady. And Dez Bryant, he's the new number one over in Dallas, so I think he's going to put up big numbers. Whole effing show. See if you can match that. There you have it. Week 10 is actually a critical week for almost every team in the league, except for EA Sports and you got Moss, unless one of them wins. It's time for the power rankings, brought to you by, Natty's Finest Studios. Let's get into them. Here we go.
Week 10 power rankings brought to you by Natty's Finest Studios. 1. Pimpin' Ain't Breezy. 2. The Whole Effin' Show. 3. America's Team. 4. Franchise. 5. The Wildcats. 6. Oh No. Backups. 7. Dem Boys. 8. Gully Gully. 9. The Rook. 10. If you're not first, you're last. 11. You got Moss. 12. EA Sport.
Okay, power rankings